Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Bradbury Group, New Zealand's best weekly political argument, hosted by the militant, Marxist, anti-Santa, Martin Bradbury. The Bradbury Group is streamed live on Rover, Sky TV, YouTube and Facebook. Proudly sponsored by Waatea, journalism you can trust. Let the arguments begin.
Kia ora Aotearoa. The true demarcation of power in a late-stage capitalism, liberal progressive democracy is the 1% richest plus their 9% enablers versus the 90% rest of us. Welcome to the Bradbury Group, New Zealand's best weekly political argument. I'm your host, the editor of the daily blog, Martin Bradbury. Bomber to my comrades, Mr. Bradbury if you're nasty. My pronouns are us and we. Coming up on this evening's show, the in-studio political panel all-stars tonight are Māori Party President John Tamihere, New Zealand Herald columnist Simon Wilson, and NZCTU Economist live from Wellington, Craig Renney. Tonight's 1-on-1 in 10 will be Palestinian journalist Dr. Ysef Al Jamal to give us a first-hand report on the situation in Gaza and the West Bank, and that will be followed by a special Middle East report with former intelligence analyst Paul Buchanan and international affairs commentator Selwyn on what will happen next in Iran. Before all that, however, is this week's War on News. New Zealand First MP Tanya Unkovich decided last week to quit politics because she has, and I quote, a deep desire to serve mankind. Steady on, White Mandela, easy. If Tanya wanted to serve mankind, she shouldn't have been a New Zealand First MP then. How was she serving mankind when she weaponised anti-trans rhetoric with her stupid toilet gender private members bill? Martin Luther King's I Had a Dream speech didn't include gender-specific toilets. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the toilet they use. Tanya has decided to step away from politics where she had a desire to serve mankind to work in the private sector where she'll be working to serve her bank account. How noble. Lucky mankind. Bye-bye, Tanya. Talking of noble, help me out with this one, folks. When Māori righteously sought the property rights interest in water after John Key sold off 49% of our hydro-generated electricity industry, the resulting Three Waters legislation was decried as Maoris stealing the water, and it was framed as a disgraceful abuse of democracy by seizing water assets when it was nothing of the sort. Contrast that hysterical response to Māori having their water interests acknowledged with news last week that Chris Bishop and Chris Luxon openly talked about overturning local council planning decisions and scrapping the regional councils to enable mass exploitation by developers. When the right punch local democracy in the face and shred our regional powers, no one says anything. But when Māori seek legal redress to their water interests being ignored, suddenly it's the end of the Westminster democratic tradition and the obliteration of Western civilization as we know it. Just so I have this straight, folks. When the right crush local democracy and rob it of assets, that's good and dandy. But when Māori ask for their property rights to be respected and their input sought, that's an existential race war against cracker. Glad we sorted that one out. And finally, in this week's War on News, temperatures break records across Northern Hemisphere in the first heatwave of 2025, while extreme weather events smashed New Zealand repeatedly last month, and yet no mention whatsoever of what is driving these extreme weather events. Unprecedented, cried the New Zealand media at the flooding that hit the top of the South Island, and yet no mention what might be causing these extreme weather events? Who knows, but I bet the answer from this government to whatever is causing these extreme weather events will probably be more cows. We are all going to die on a burning planet thanks to the lies of the petro-industrial complex and their polluter mates. To quote the great Mike Hosking, happy days. The in-studio political panel all-stars up shortly, whānau. But first, this week's 1-on-1 in 10 with Palestinian journalist Dr. Yousef Al Jamal to give us a first-hand report on the situation in Gaza and the West Bank. Kia ora, comrade.
Kia ora, thank you for having me.
Welcome to the show and thank you for being available to the Fourth Estate. Our democracy is grateful. Dr. Yousef, you are currently visiting Aotearoa, New Zealand to provide a balance to the very one-sided mainstream media coverage of the obscenity that is occurring in Gaza and the West Bank. You are a writer, an activist, an official Gaza coordinator. Could you please give us the update from your people under these current war crimes?
I run my own podcast called Palcast, and I just had a guest from Gaza, a guitarist, Mr. Ibrahim, who described having a meal a day. And when I say a meal a day, that's canned food. This has been the situation in Gaza for the past 3 months and a half. And he's among the lucky ones who receive support from external sources in Gaza. Many people are being starved in Gaza. Hundreds of people lost their lives because of starvation, and this is engineered starvation. Just last night, Israel bombed a popular cafe
Yes.
where journalists and artists gather, killing 33 of them. Israel also bombed 7 schools over the night in Gaza, and we have about 100 to 150 people who get killed every day in Gaza. Over the past 4 weeks alone, more than 600 people have been killed while lining up to receive aid by the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. So this is the level of catastrophe we're talking about. 70,000 people have been killed, 14,000 people are still under the rubble of their homes, and 17,000 children lost both of their parents. So this is a redefinition of savagery.
Dr. Yousef, we are seeing terrible numbers of an appalling nature coming out despite the bias of the mainstream media. You've quoted the numbers that have been killed, 121,000 Palestinians maimed and injured. You've noted that over 17,000 of those were children, and these numbers don't include those still trapped under the rubble, and they don't include the Lancet projections of those who have died from all the secondary impacts of extreme military violence, which the Lancet suggests could be an extra 200,000 deaths. Added together, are we really looking at as many as 250,000 dead, with UN estimates that 92% of all residential homes have been destroyed in Gaza? Is this nightmare scenario really possible?
That's absolutely possible. We have about 500,000 people who have either been killed, injured, or indirectly lost their lives because of the genocide, such as my dad. The majority of senior citizens lost their lives. You have about 130,000 people who have been injured, and about the same number of people who were forced to leave Gaza to Egypt. So we are talking about 20% of the population at least who were pushed out of Gaza, were killed, injured, or lost their lives. This is the reality we have. This is a genocide televised. I believe this is the first genocide to be televised in our modern history, and we need immediate action to save the lives of people in Gaza. Because even if Israel stops bombing people in Gaza within a month, 4 weeks from now, and I speak from experience, I have direct family in Gaza. My family has a meal a day because they have the support to get a meal a day, and a meal a day is canned food. Within 4 months, if aid is not allowed into Gaza, and if it continues to be used and weaponized as kill zones and death traps for Palestinians, we will see thousands of Palestinians losing their lives every day because of starvation.
How do you view the uproar towards Glastonbury Festival performers who criticised Israel? Is there a disconnect between people being offended by musicians when war crimes are being committed?
See, the BBC did not cover it because they knew that some pro-Palestinian artists will chant against Israel or be in favor of Palestine. They're more worried that this is going to happen versus covering a genocide that is taking place. The BBC has also withdrawn a documentary on Gaza narrated by a Gazan child using lame excuses. It's beyond imagination what the level of dehumanization that the Palestinian people have been subjected to. And we have to change this narrative. We have to change this reality because the streets are with Palestine. You see, you go to concerts, protests, rallies, the thousands of people taking to the streets every week, but governments are not listening. There is a huge disconnect. There is a huge gap between the voice of people on the street and what governments and mainstream media are doing.
Defenders of Israel will argue that Hamas started this on October the 7th and that everything that occurred after that is on the Palestinian people. How would you respond to that position?
Well, this started in 1917 with the British colonization of Palestine that paved the way for Israel to be established on the ruins of 534 Palestinian towns and villages. My great-grandfather was killed in his village. My grandfather lived his entire life as a refugee, and my father lived his entire life as a refugee and lost his life to the genocide. So it started with establishment of Israel, I would say, if we do not say the British colonization, direct ethnic cleansing of Palestinian towns and villages that made 70% of the population of Gaza as refugees. It started with 17 years of siege, where hundreds of people lost their lives because of Israel's denial of medical permits. Started with the killing of 1,500 Palestinians 2008, 2007, 200, 2012, and 2,500 in 2014, and thousands of others throughout the years. Our life has never been normal. We've been living under siege, brutal medieval siege in Gaza, where a 10-minute surgery could cost you your life. My sister was one of these people who lost her life at the age 26 because Israel denied her a permit in 2007. So, there's a discussion about the danger of a single narrative that starts with second.
Yeah.
October 7th is second.
Yeah.
First, we have to talk about the Nakba of 1948 and
Sure.
the British colonization of Palestine in 1917.
Do you honestly believe that Israel would really stop bombing if Hamas handed back all the hostages?
90% of Hamas is destroyed. Israel wants the ethnic cleansing of Gaza. This started with 1969 with Moshe Dayan, Israel's defense minister, introducing a secret plan to send young people in Gaza on a one-way ticket to Paraguay. So they always wanted to see Gaza as a parking lot, to quote an Israeli who spoke to an Israeli radio in 2008. This is the ethnic cleansing of Gaza. Was withdrawn from the drawer of Israeli politicians. They always had it on the agenda, and they always wanted to see Gaza without Gazans and Palestine without Palestinians. That's my argument.
Here are the lyrics to the Trump Gaza AI advert that Trump sent out on social media with Donald and Netanyahu in a swimming pool drinking cocktails, large golden statues of Trump and Elon Musk walking around raining money on everyone. Donald's coming to set you free, bringing the life for all to see. No more tunnels, no more fear. Trump Gaza is finally here. How utterly insane is that?
I mean, a lot of people in the US and worldwide do not take Donald Trump seriously, and his artificial intelligence video was a continuation of statements and actions he has taken to dehumanize the Palestinian people and to deprive them of their land by recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital. He sees Gaza as a real estate place, investment. He calls it a demolition site, and this is how he sees it. He thinks it's another, high rise in New York City that could be demolished and rebuilt, not knowing the history of Gaza. Gaza is one of the oldest cities in the world.
Yes.
The word goes in English, comes from Gaza. He lacks history, he lacks understanding. We have one of the oldest sites in the Middle East, the Omari Mosque, that was the St. John Cathedral before being turned into a mosque over history. Gaza is very old, and he needs to understand the connections that Palestinians have with the land.
A recent Israeli public opinion poll found that 82% of Jewish Israelis supported the mass expulsion of Gazans. I've read extensively about the malicious violence the IDF have meted out to Palestinians, and there is a cruel perversity in their violence, the shooting of children by snipers in the head, the widespread sexual torture inside Israeli detention centres, the pinning of soft toys as trophies from Palestinian children that the bulldozers use when flattening homes, the dropping of military-grade weaponry on Palestinians in tents, hospitals, homes, schools with the false justification that Hamas were using human shields, the heavy uranium munitions used and the toxic waste the bombing campaign has poisoned Gaza with, the brutal Zionist settlers' violence in the West Bank, the use of hunger as a weapon, the group punishment mentality. I put to you, Dr. Yousef, that the Israelis have become the biggest victims of their oppression of the Palestinian people, because oppressing a people doesn't just mutilate those they oppress, it also warps the soul of the oppressor, doesn't it?
Absolutely. My late mentor and intellectual, Dr. Rifat Al, who wrote the famous poet, If I Must Die,
Yes.
You Must Live to Tell My Story, edited a collection of short stories out of Gaza in 2014. And one of these stories deals with the psyche of Israeli soldiers and what they do when they go back home. The occupation of Palestine by Israel not only damages Palestinians and their futures and their homes, but also the souls of Israeli soldiers.
Absolutely.
Many committed suicide after leaving
Yes,
Gaza. Many are
yes.
fighting not to go back to Gaza. Many rates of domestic violence in Israel has increased after October 7 because of many soldiers coming back from Gaza after committing horrible crimes. So
Finally,
harms them.
what can we in New Zealand do to stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people?
New Zealand is far from Gaza, but if we look at the history, it's too close. In fact, we have Maori soldier graves in Gaza at the British War Cemetery. The history is very much interconnected, and New Zealanders have to keep making noise, keep protesting, keep amplifying Palestinian voices until the government listens. We have the BDS movement, boycott, divestment, sanctions, and we have to get to the levels of sanctions. Please get your national MPs. We need 6 of them to sign into a draft resolution that will impose a trade embargo on Israel. And this is how Israel is going to change. We have to move before Israel moves.
Yes. Thank you, comrade. Good luck to you and your people.
For having me.
Peace be upon you.
Thank you. Peace be upon you.
Our political panel all-stars tonight are John Tamihere, Simon Wilson and Craig Renney to discuss Tarsh Kemp's legacy, the effectiveness of the new range of crime laws and the cost of living crisis compounded by a slumping economy. But before them, tonight's Iran and Middle East special feature. The world has been shocked at the rapid escalation of Israel's and America's military attack on Iran's nuclear, military and gas infrastructure. Israel has been claiming Iran is months away from a nuclear weapon since the 1980s, and the huge range of strikes suggests more than removing a possible nuclear threat and far more like an attempt at regime change, which will have enormous geopolitical ramifications. Military intelligence suggests, alongside the IAEA, that America's attacks didn't obliterate Iran's nuclear capabilities after all, and that Iran could regain their nuclear ambitions within months. Where the hell does this leave us all? To discuss the latest, we have the team from New Zealand's best international foreign affairs podcast, A View from Afar, foreign affairs commentator Selwyn Manning and intelligence analyst Paul Buchanan. Kia ora, comrades, and welcome to you both.
Tēnā koe, Bob.
A View from Afar is easily the best international affairs podcast in New Zealand. Thank you for your service to public broadcasting. Selwyn, if I may start with you, please. We had Helen Clark on a couple of weeks ago, and she was adamant that the legal threshold to justify preemption was not met in any way, shape or form by the Americans and Israelis when they attacked Iran. Was this an illegal action, and what are the consequences?
Yeah, it's an absolute illegal action, and I just refer to Paul's work on this. He's spoken publicly and also written around the differences relating to preemptive and other legal aspects to that. When it came out, it was very clear that preemptive defence is not a legal cloak, if you like, but that it's an illegal action, in particular when a threat is not imminent.
Yes.
But with that having said, what we could see was when those strikes occurred on Iran from Israel, that those strikes, there was a tripwire, if you like, that presented itself, an opportunity for Israel to go for it. And I would suggest and argue that the IAEA has really evaluated exactly what it should say in a charged atmosphere and not leave anything that would allow a country like Israel, who is obviously expanding its security footprint in the Middle East, to take advantage of what a global body may say. And what I'm talking about there is, on the morning of the strikes, the IAEA came to a view where it believed that there was traces of uranium in sites of which Iran had not disclosed.
Right.
That was all that was required. And the other tripwire of opportunity, obviously, was the opportunity for Israel to scuttle any talks that the Trump administration was having with Iran. So I'll just hand those two things in a contextual manner in response to your questions here.
Paul, you are a former intelligence analyst. What do you make of the Pentagon leak suggesting the American attack had failed? And what are serious intelligence advisors making of Trump's strategy here, do you think?
The attack was about saving face for the Trump administration, then effectively demolishing the Iranian nuclear program. I mean, Selwyn said it well. Preemptive strikes are strikes that occur when you are about to be attacked and you have verified evidence that you are about to be attacked. Nothing of the sort was going on in Iran. This was what is known as a preventative attack, which has a long history. Okay, the precedent is established. The difference being is that attacks are justified in the laws of war. Preventative attacks are not.
Right.
So this was, if you will, a strike of convenience for the United States to show support for an ally. But I'll be honest with you, I think the U.S. intelligence services probably warned the Trump administration that a lot of particularly the stored uranium and most of the centrifuges used to enrich them had already been moved. And we can speculate about who might have helped them move, who has experience handling.
I think we've just had him drop out there. Selwyn, sorry, Paul. Selwyn, who is driving the agenda, Netanyahu or Trump? Oh, we're having some sound problems. Tech guys? Unfortunately, are we able to get them back, guys? Anything? Anyone? Yes?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Go for it. Who's running this? Paul, while Iran is the focus, terrible violence is being committed in Gaza and the West Bank. How many conflict fronts can the IDF keep up?
Well, they're on the front foot right now. Let's be very clear. I think we need to broaden this up slightly. I'm going to be very brief about this. This is an inflection point in a very long international transition leading to systemic realignment, where the global South is emerging and the global North is declining. This war, this expanded Middle Eastern war, because the war now transcends Gaza. It's a war by Israel against Shiites. All right, it's not just the Iranians, but the Houthis. They're going for it. They're using October 7th as the excuse or justification to realign the map of the Middle East. Right. But we have to be clear, both the Russo-Ukrainian war and the Israel, Shia, Palestinian, whatever you want to call it, wars are proxy wars for the larger conflict that's coming between North and South. And quite frankly, given demographic trends, given technology transfers, the South will eventually prevail, if not immediately. So what Israel is doing is going for broke, and they cornered. I disagree with Selwyn in this regard. Netanyahu is playing Trump like a fiddle. He cornered him into supporting the illegal bombing.
Yep.
Now, Trump's going to have to wear that albatross because he said that the place was destroyed. It was not. They'll be up and running in a couple of months. And so I think what we're seeing is a shifting of the tide. You know, it's not discernible right now in front of our eyes because Israel looks like, you know, it's doing well. But if you stretch out a little longer time frame, quite frankly, especially given that the United States, as Selwyn well said 3 years ago, the United States is a very unstable polity. It's no longer a superpower. It's a declining power in front of our eyes. And given that fact, given the fact that the South, and remember, the South is an ideological construct, not a geographic concept. The South includes China, India, and Russia, Brazil, South Africa, Indonesia. The Gulf states are all part of the BRICS now. Yeah. And they're the rising tide. And Europe, quite frankly, is part of the declining Western tide. So all I would simply say is this. This is a proxy war. The Israelis may win tactically, but strategically, they are going to lose. And the United States, one way or another, is going to go down with them.
Selwyn, why would the Iranians trust Trump when they were bombed while they were negotiating with him?
Well, this is the heart of the problem. If you look at all the news events today, they're centering right on that bomber. There's the Iranian foreign minister who is saying, we will talk, the diplomatic door is open, but it is too soon yet to get a shape of trust or an element of trust that will allow us the confidence to negotiate a pathway forward with confidence. Saying the same thing about the IAEA. Bomber, I would just take this a little bit further too. For those in the United States and for those in Israel that think bombing the nuclear facilities that clearly the evidence suggests were energy generation ambitions, and if they weren't, call the bluff, put the inspectors in, keep a watch in perpetuity, if you like. But what has been created here is a more hostile regime. We can see that the mass arrests that are going on, it is hardening up. One would imagine that that is a form of defence internally, but externally too. If it can't develop a nuclear deterrent bomb of conventional means, what do you think it's going to do? It is going to go for a dirty bomb and scare the living daylights out of the region. Anybody in their situation would probably have that on the table as one of the tactical responses to what we've had here. So the whole picture is ridiculous in the extreme. I think Paul is absolutely right, and I think the audio broke down. I'm in full agreement with Paul on the fact that Netanyahu has played Trump and his administration. The administration has provided the opportunity of a lifetime for the Netanyahu types in the Israeli government, and they are going for that.
Paul, how is Putin viewing the Iranian situation?
Oh, he's relishing every moment of it. The best thing that the rivals of the United States can do, because again, we're now in a shifting balance of power. The U.S. is no longer the dominant power. Russia is not equal, but China certainly is. And what's happening is they're sitting on the sidelines, quietly, I would say in the case of the Chinese, not so quietly, helping the Iranians recover as quickly as possible. And this is diverting, yet again, American blood and treasure into these silly wars of opportunity fought on the behest of other powers. I mean, there's nothing existential about the war between Israel and its neighbors. You know, Israel picks fights with everybody. And none of that strikes to the core of U.S. interests. And yet, for various reasons, the United States feels compelled to allow the Israeli tail to wag its dog. And Trump will not change that. I mean, Trump, if anything, will double down. So the rivals, if you will, the giants' rivals, will take opportunity out of this. I personally think Putin will press a very strong offensive in Ukraine this summer. I think the Chinese are quietly working to ensure that Iran's nuclear stockpiles are very well safeguarded and will return into operation within months. And they're not the only ones who have a vested interest in seeing that Israel and the United States not get away with their shenanigans, because we have to remember what Israel has done in Gaza and elsewhere, and what the United States has supported with its logistics and weapons are war crimes, crimes against humanity. I mean, to be honest, I was very reluctant to say the word, but if it ain't genocide, it's certainly ethnic cleansing.
Right.
Right. Gaza. And,
exactly.
Well, for a guy like me, it's a little hard to choke it out.
Yeah.
Given that I was privy to intelligence flows from Israel, I am acutely aware of Iran's misbehavior in the past, but I'm also aware of history. Just as Yousef said, the history does not end at October 7th. It goes way past that.
Just a final question. Gentlemen, we've got
the community simply says, you guys, that is the United States and Israel, you have violated norms and rules with impunity, and that's going to come back to bite you in the rear.
Final question to you both. Is Iran more likely to seek a nuclear weapon after this bombing campaign?
Oh, well, I'll go first. I believe that it's a part of its defensive program now. You see a hardening, like we were saying just before, of the regime internally. That seems to be defensive in a sense. And I think externally it will look at every opportunity that's available to it. As far as Israel's concerned, what Paul was saying there too, I'd just like to leverage off that a little bit more, that the problem with respect to international humanitarian law, that when it comes to Israel, it seems to have impunity. And that is something that countries like New Zealand should stand up. Instead of the Prime Minister on the fields of Belgium, the World War I fields that he was standing on only last week, saying New Zealand's just a long way away. That's just not good enough for a small country that has stood with a big voice on issues of global principle in the past. That history should be repeated in these cases too.
Paul, your final word?
Final word. Iran with one nuke puts everybody in check. And that nuke can be a dirty bomb placed in a train station in the United States. And imagine a dirty bomb that's not medical waste, but is enriched uranium wrapped around some high explosives in a suitcase. The Iranians have many ways to strike back. They have global networks. This is not over. And you know which is the state that has the most to learn from this? Taiwan, of all countries, because Taiwan with one nuke puts the check on China, because the Chinese do not know where the Taiwanese might deliver that thing. The same applies for Iran. If I was a Saudi Arabian, if I was a Qatari, if I was from the Emirates, you don't know if that dirty bomb is showing up amongst your people or further afield in the United States. So, no, as I said before, this is just the latest inflection, the latest iteration of a transitional moment that is still becoming and whose outcome is yet to be seen.
Thank you, Selwyn. Thank you, Paul, so much for coming on this evening. Have a great time. We'll talk soon. Okay. Now to our political panel all-stars. Our first panellist is the only reason you would buy a subscription to the New Zealand Herald, militant cyclist and Auckland visionary Simon Wilson. Kia ora, comrade. Welcome to the show. One word to describe the week, please, sir.
Formula One. Now, it's not what you're thinking. Am I? Yeah, the mic's on. Yeah. Prime Minister today, 1st of July, got up and said how wonderful it was that New Zealanders on the Puhoi to Warkworth highway, the new expressway up there, can now drive at 110 kilometres an hour, channeling their inner Liam Lawson. He said it's great to get that sense of the wind flowing through your hair. And when he said that, you know he's making a joke. But why is he making a joke? Why is the Prime Minister inviting New Zealanders to drive like a race car driver? July 1 is the date where all the speed limits that were lowered in the last few years have had to be back to where they were. What we are now seeing in New Zealand is a whole lot of schools, a whole lot of suburbs that have had safe limits overturned and they've gone higher. And there are places in the country like the Motutari motor camp on the southern shores of Lake Taupo, which I wrote about last week, where the highway goes right through the motor camp. And as a consequence of that, it's now 100 kilometres an hour. This is one of the most dangerous bits of state highway in the country. It is also, there's now a new 100 kilometres an hour sign right at the point where a driver not so long ago lost control, went round the blind corner, suddenly realised there's a motor camp here, ploughed into a tent and killed a boy sleeping there. It's now.
But productivity, Simon, productivity.
Well, the trucks, 1 in 6 of the vehicles on that road is a truck, and those trucks have all been going through there at 60, and there has not been a problem. They still, when they get through there, they still manage to tip some of them into the lake. It's a dangerous road, but hey, you can channel your Liam Lawson through the motor camp now, so how fantastic.
Thank you for that. Our next panellist is the New Zealand Council of Trade Unions Economist, live from Wellington. Craig Renney, kia ora, comrade. One word to describe the week, please, sir.
Confidence, Bomber.
Yes.
Confidence, and we've seen employment confidence data come in. It's come in much worse than was expected. We've seen business confidence data come in. The latest business confidence data says that companies' own expectations of the economy over the next year, they're really weak. We've seen investment confidence disappear. We saw confidence in whether or not we can deliver a just transition disappear because oil prices were suddenly going to be $75 a week. And we're starting to see confidence that we've controlled inflation starting to disappear as well. Inflation expectations are creeping up and up and up. And what that means is the Reserve Bank will have to suddenly start thinking, we might not be able to cut interest rates in the future. And our ability to deliver that economic growth that we want to off the back of those interest rate cuts, and frankly, the entirety of the National Party's election strategy disappears if that's the case.
And last, but certainly not least, he is here directly from Tarsh Kemp's moving tangi. We are privileged to have him here. Māori Party President John Tamihere. Kia ora, comrade. One word to describe the week, please, sir.
Oh, well, we're just coming back from a very difficult moment in time. And so, moi ngā Tash. And haro ki a koutou te whānau pani. So I just passed my regards back to the whānau. Look, we're, in terms of where we're heading, we're extraordinarily supportive of the Māori Roll Call campaign, which is running in tandem with the Electoral Commission over the Māori option. There's 130,000 Māori not on any roll. There's 290,000 Māori on a general or Pākehā roll. They're there by a policy over 50 years in the making, where they were forced for 2 elections onto that roll.
That's right.
Never had an option until a census. And so they've now got opportunities and options. There's 38,000 rangatahi that will turn 18 between 23 and 26. All of them need to be alerted to their civic duty. And so it's a civic duty campaign. We'll support that all the way. And Tash has given it a good kicker. And so we'll just see where this takes us when the numbers start to come in every quarter with the Electoral Commission.
Awesome. Tonight's political panel topics, ladies and gentlemen, are Issue 1, the legacy, Takatai, Tarsh Kemp. Issue 2, new coward punch first responder assault laws and harsher penalties for shoplifting. Is this virtue signalling or meaningful crime policy? And Issue 3 tonight, the cost of living crisis plus the failing economy. Let's begin tonight's panel with the shock passing of Tamaki Makaurau MP Takatai Tarsh Kemp. John, you are quoted as saying she was working for the people right up until she passed. There can be no more mighty or noble way to leave this earthly realm when working so hard for the people. Your thoughts?
Oh, I think the context is quite important. She was diagnosed with a very aggressive form of kidney disease in February 2024, and we didn't know. Well, we knew she had a problem coming to the end of the campaign in 2023 because she was run down. Sure. So she went through all these tests. Anyway, cut a long story short, that's what happened. So I've been through this with family, and I understand the struggles. And so we met with the whānau to say to her, you may have to consider standing down. Her view with her whānau support was that we give her an opportunity to see whether she can handle a wellness track as well as stand on the front line. So she said to me, give me a chance to stand on the front line and prove myself. And that's what she did. And so on the morning she passed away, about 2:59 in the morning, she had returned from standing on the floor in Parliament, had dinner with colleagues, jumped on the 7 o'clock out of Wellington, landed in South Auckland, met with her team. She was meeting with all our kaumātua rōpū up in Tamihere the following day, and then posted quite a few things up from 9:30 on her Instagram and on her page, hooked up to her dialysis machinery and never woke up. So, had only the week before celebrated her 50th birthday. So, we and she was an unusual MP for Te Pāti Māori because she wasn't as raucous as the other members in the team.
No, you're not saying.
Yeah, and so she brought a level of sort of calmness to the team. Yeah, and so we'll greatly miss that, and her electorate will miss her, particularly out in South Auckland.
Yeah. Craig, the CTU was very quick in praising Takatai as an MP who worked for the people, and you acknowledged her role as the worker rights spokesperson for the Māori Party. What was the work that mattered to her that was so important to the union movement?
Well, the work that mattered to her was workers' rights, was the discrimination that Māori employees, Māori kaimahi, right around the country feel every day. The work that we're trying to deliver in areas like corporate manslaughter, in engineered stone, in industries where we see health and safety being a real problem, in industries dominated by Māori workforces, but we see no action in those spaces. Forestry, for example, being a real concern. If I might, Bomber, I'd just like first to give my condolences to her whānau and to her colleagues at Te Pāti Māori and to John. Because I think it's really important here. I never met at Takatai personally, but I saw the heartfelt speeches in the House, and and it was quite clear the emotion in the House and the impact that she'd had in that short time on that House. And it's almost a reminder sometimes that actually politics is actually the least important thing sometimes in life. But the work that she did in that workers' rights space in health and safety, in making sure that a group of people who were often so overlooked in the economy were being looked at was really important, and it's a huge loss to Aotearoa to have lost her at such an early age.
Simon, the shock of this passing forced a civility we rarely see in Parliament, with both David Seymour and Shane Jones showing a level of dignity that matched Tash's mana. Does Parliament need to remember they're all human beings in there?
I think that's a very well-made point. Could I also add my condolences, John, to you, to the whānau, to Pāti Māori. It's a terrible thing that's happened, and we all grieve. Emma Wepi Hana, who was Emma Espiner then, wrote an essay for me in a book of essays some years ago where she said, why don't we have tikanga Māori governing the way Parliament works? Which a lot of people would probably feel is just a completely shocking, ridiculous idea. But her argument was, you're going to get really vigorous debate, you're going to get a high standard of oratory, you're going to get people really going at each other, but it will be underpinned by a level of respect that Parliament seems for almost all of the time simply incapable of recognising and valuing. And I was very taken with that, and I think, there's a lot in it. I also want to say about Tash herself. I've been out to the Manurewa Marae. I've seen the operation there. It's an extraordinarily impressive thing. And if you think back to the COVID days, I mean, Craig's quite right about the workers' rights, but back in the COVID days, what that marae did in relation to vaccinations in particular was extraordinary. And if you put that in the context of they had to fight a government that didn't want to acknowledge that Māori could run vaccination programs. So it was a really uphill battle for them. They also had to deal with a lot of vax hesitation among their own people.
That's right.
Yeah. Tash was in the forefront of all that and organising that and doing that for her people in a way that probably few other people in Parliament have done for anybody.
Yes.
Her contribution was so significant.
Finally, to you all, how will Tash be remembered, John?
Oh, look, here's how we will remember Tash. One is she brought calmness and serenity to very tough issues that were being debated in the caucus. And so the caucus will miss her ability to bring levity and a whole range of other things to our conversations. Secondly, she was able to inject herself in a way which didn't cause others to feel that she was being judgmental of them and raising an opposite point. So that these are skills that people hone, and some are born with, and some are born without. And so we'll miss her that sense of serenity, calmness, and an ability to bring peace by joining and building bridges rather than burning them. And so we will miss that tremendously, and her ability to organise. She took on an institution in Penny, and no one else wanted to stand. And so she was an outstanding counter to him because she was everything he wasn't. And so we had to choose someone of that ilk, and she did a marvellous job, notwithstanding.
Craig, how are we going to remember her?
Hopefully we remember her via her legacy. She was someone who was taken away far too soon. The potential in the House that we could quite clearly see. But hopefully the legacy that she will leave is essentially, if we're all working on the campaigns that she was working on and deliver those campaigns that she was working on, working for children, working for marginalised whānau across South Auckland. If we can deliver that will be a huge legacy for Aotearoa.
Simon?
I think we'll remember her for all the things that we've talked about, but also let's not forget that she was also a hip-hop extraordinary champion administrator.
Yes.
She did so much in that space.
Yeah.
And I really hope that we don't forget that because, okay, she was a calm voice, I hear you, but she also clearly knew how to have a lot of fun.
Comrades, we need to move on to issue 2 tonight. Are the swarm of new laws being rushed through to criminalise assaulting first responders, coward punchers and steeper penalties for shoplifting? Problem is, we already have laws against assaulting first responders, and the government can't actually tell us how many coward punches are even occurring each year. Is this real crime policy or a flailing attempt to look tough on crime as the economy falters? Simon, these laws are solutions looking for problems. Why are we wasting time with tough on crime virtue signals? Poverty drives shoplifting, and harsher penalties won't change that.
I think there's a deeper issue as well. The thing that drives some people, and they're almost exclusively men, to think that a king hit, or what we're now calling a coward punch, is an appropriate way to behave, is far deeper than I'm just going to hit someone. It goes deep into the psyche of what it is to be a man in this country. And the problems are that problem is not something that's easy to solve, and it certainly isn't going to be solved by putting people with a tendency into violence into jail for longer. It's an absurd idea.
Follow-up question. Most attacks on ambulance drivers is driven by people panicking in the heat of the moment. How's a new law going to stop that?
I think you're right about that, but also you'd probably say that an awful lot of violence generally is driven by people panicking. If you're feeling threatened and you're going to lash back or whatever it is,
John, Prime Minister Christopher Luxon says he's comfortable with the anticipated jump in the prison population at a cost of at least $153 million over the next decade as a result of his harsher sentences reforms. Many of those will be Māori, the mentally ill, the addicted and the poor. Are you comfortable that the Prime Minister is comfortable?
Well, it just shows you how ignorant he is of the society and the community he lives in, and how entitled and privileged and the supremacy, just oozes out of the bloke's bald head. So we've got a real problem under this regime because of its leadership. You see, you cannot punish your way out of poverty. You cannot police your way out of poverty. See, we've got 65% of the prison population, wahine women, Māori women.
Yeah.
80% of them are in there for crimes against property, not people. Now, they're there because they've either committed fraud, forgery, or stealing to feed and get nappies and get other condiments for their children. So they're getting locked up for that. I just think all of this is dog whistle politics, and what it does is it just sugarcoats, and it's a sugar hit for the 6% that voted for that thug that runs New Zealand First, and the 8% for Seymour. So I just think when the great deal maker signed off on his coalition regime, he gave prime ministership away on big issues, and what he does there is just stand there saying yeah. Never remonstrates.
Follow-up question. Won't the coward's punch just end up being interpreted as any Māori who hits someone first? That's the fear, that it's just going to be attached.
Well, look, there's enough independent research to indicate that if you over-police the underprivileged and under-police the overprivileged, you get what you get, police 10-7. And that's any brown kids in the car will be turned over.
Right.
They will get antsy. There will be an altercation.
Yeah.
They will be arrested. They will be multiply charged.
Right.
They will not get off.
No.
They will not get off that conveyor belt for another 15 to 20 years. You see, if you don't understand who you're dealing with and how to deal with them, and you think you can deal with them through a punitive regime, and it's going to solve everything, you're sadly mistaken. The last thing I'll make on this is that the cops themselves have got some problems because they're running out of bed nights, right?
Right.
So out West Auckland there, the bed nights in terms of the police holding cells, the remand cells, and the inability to get bail homes and parole homes is all starting to come to a head. They're running out of infrastructure because they've changed judicial discretion.
Yes.
And they've upped the ante on a whole range of things. And so they've made a perfect storm in terms of lifting. The only thing economically good about this will be building jails.
Yeah. John, what do the police do when they have nowhere to put someone who they might be about to arrest?
You then, your discretion then...
Do they arrest them?
Well, your discretion then is this. If I ain't got a place to put them, what do I do with them?
Yeah.
So your discretion then is forced to give them warnings because somebody that might have done lesser things that's actually occupying the cells have got the space, and then you've got this problem that the police catch them, the court system's got to process them.
Yeah.
And then the correction system has to house them. So you've got a lot of moving parts here, and they're not resourced.
Craig, is this a distraction so Kiwis don't notice the economy is going down the toilet? Don't we have way bigger fish to fry than the unidentified and undefined coward punches?
Well, I mean, I'm not usually accused of classing the place up, Bomber, but the Roman poet Juvenal famously said...
say it in Latin, Craig. Say it in Latin.
Famously said, the public wanted bread and circuses. The government's run out of bread, so now we've got the circuses. Right? This is just simply symbols, where choosing to create new legislation, which looks identical to existing legislation, if you punch someone, you are charged with an offence.
That's right.
Right? We can choose which offence to charge you with, but you get charged with an offence. If you punch someone, and the implication was that you intended to harm someone so severely you could kill them,
grievous bodily harm.
You can charge them with attempted manslaughter.
Yep.
There is nothing on the books that's stopping anybody from doing this already. We've just now created a new label to put on. And as you quite rightly said, how do you prove a punch? How do you prove the intent of a punch? And so it will be those with those who are least represented legally. those who aren't able to afford a decent lawyer, those who don't have the means to challenge that in court, they will be the ones to suffer from this. What I would say is that the evidence from Australia, where this has been in legislation, is that it was passed and it took years to get the first case actually through the courts, because there was no evidential proof of that, so it failed every evidential test.
Follow-up question. The military boot camps are costing $30 million more. What should that money be spent on instead?
It should be put in a pile in the middle of a room and burnt, and it would still be better value than the boot camp program.
Amen. Comrades, we need to move on to the final issue tonight, and that is the ongoing cost of living crisis and the stumbling economy. The latest Stats New Zealand figures show in the past 12 months, food prices have gone up 4.4%, the highest increase since December 2023. Craig, RNZ have been comparing supermarket shopping and found that in May 2022, their first shop at Woolworths Green Lane cost them $238 and $217 at Pack and Save Royal Oak. In 2025, those same items at Woolworths have shot up to $305, an extra $67 at the checkout, whereas the Pack and Save shop was now $270, an extra $53 in cost. Despite promising to tackle the cost of living crisis, the government has failed, haven't they?
Well, what we're clicking on, if this was a government that had a laser-like focus on the cost of living, which was its claim, then it might want to nip down the Specsavers, because right now it's failing to deliver on that. And the people who are really suffering from this are those on low incomes, those on fixed incomes, those on benefits, because as you say, food prices are going up 4.4%. Rent is going up faster than general inflation. It's going up faster than wages right now. Rates are going up. All the fixed costs, insurances are going up. All the things that you can't avoid are going up more quickly than luxury items, which are actually holding down general inflation. And so as a consequence, the poor are feeling it even more than they were a few months ago, because the cost of essentials is rising so quickly.
John, 758 construction businesses have gone into liquidation in the last 12 months, thanks in part to the government's freeze on transport, housing and hospital investment spending at the beginning of 2024. Centrix reported this morning construction jobs have fallen by 12,723 in the last year. How is this government getting away with it?
Well, what happened when they came in? Firstly, they borrowed money to pay the $18 billion to their mates.
Yep.
They then put the handbrake on austerity. And in doing that, they haven't built one house.
No.
Okay, but what they have done is actually buggered up the whole of the construction industry.
Yeah.
The state, because of a small economy, spends between 40 to 45%, and these boys will validate that or not. The fact of the matter is that that's trigger money, a catalyst money,
right,
and it grows confidence in the private sector to divvy up and do underwrites as well. That has not occurred. They put the handbrake on all that. Yeah. So in the construction industry, as you wind it back, it doesn't jump back into life overnight.
No.
Yeah. Okay, they go to Australia and work.
Yes.
And they head to other places. So we've got a major issue on growing unemployment with skilled workforce. Our unskilled workforce is now legionary, right?
Yeah.
So we've got this storm coming. And you're not going to be able to police your way out of it, and you because we've got 4,000 youth 14 to 20 in West Auckland. There's 20,000 in South Auckland. I'm just talking about Māori now. The Pacific Island and Pākehā kids are separate cohorts. They're not on education, training, skills, or employment. Now they got nowhere else to go but get up mischief. Yeah. And the more you turn a blind eye to this, as this mob does, the more you invite a gang numbers to increase, carnage to increase, and the burning of bridges between communities, which then breaks down into racial profiling and all the rest of it. And but it's predetermined.
Yes,
we've got underemployment, as my mate from the CTU will say. the level of underemployment is huge
Yeah.
in this country. So even willing workers trying hard aren't getting enough hours.
Yep.
Right? That's on top of a major unemployment. And I don't know whether you can continue to trust MSD
Yeah.
and its
yeah,
numb's.
Yeah.
Well,
I
they
think
won't.
it's way worse.
Well, they
right?
won't give them.
No, that's right.
Well, just to that quick point, there's 240,000 people underemployed in New Zealand right now. Now
Wow.
that means they're working part-time and they want more hours. Now you can add to that 180,000 people who are on job seekers support.
Yes.
So the numbers very quickly build up to a very significant portion of people being essentially not with the work that they want, or the hours of work that they want,
Yeah.
and they're being a real problem right now.
Simon, reports out recently show worker and employer expectations of real wage deflation are worsening as the economy slides back into a mid-year stagnation. Where is the pro-growth government?
I think
Where is it?
everything that people have said just before is true, and you can add into that the fact that the tertiary sector is in crisis.
Yes.
Although we have unemployment rising, we should be therefore getting more people going to tertiary study. We are not. That's a real problem. Our research and development spending as a country is among the weakest in the OECD. The Infrastructure Commission, Te Waihanga, last week reported on the government's fabled big new 30-year infrastructure plan, and what they said must have horrified Chris Bishop and Christopher Luxon. They said we should be spending 60% of our infrastructure spend on maintenance. We are not doing that.
Wow.
And you can think of that as potholes if you like, but it's a whole lot more than that. It's hospitals falling down and so on. And they said, the Infrastructure Commission said, rather than dreaming of ridiculously expensive roads, we should be spending to make what we have work properly, and then on top of that adding to it. Those are things that will get us growth in the economy, but on top of all that, it is the rational thing to do in our economy for anyone with money to buy houses.
Right.
And until that changes, we are not going to get the economic development we deserve.
Comrades, we need to wrap the show with a final word. Simon, your final word this week, please, sir.
Wasn't that a good one? I'm just going to stick with that. We need a wealth tax, a capital gains tax. I don't frankly care what it is, as long as it is a mechanism that is powerful enough to make people think twice and to invest in the productive sectors in the economy.
Craig, your final word this week, please, sir.
Is long term. We've seen the economy turn this over the past month. It doesn't look good. There's no future engine of growth. Unemployment's likely to rise. We need to be thinking long term, delivering infrastructure, delivering long term investment, and we're not. We're all thinking about 493 days ahead of us, which is likely to be when the election is, rather than thinking 30 years.
John, your final word this week, please, sir.
Oh, look, I agree with everybody else, but we have to have a grown-up conversation about some form of capital gains, stamp duty, land, whatever it is, that needs to happen and happen overnight. And then the second thing is that with all this warmongering going on at the moment, we have to declare ourselves a neutral state.
Kia ora.
And
Absolutely.
we have to be the Switzerland of the South Pacific. And we have to be friends to everybody and enemies to nobody, and we should not be drawn in inexorably as the 51st state of the United States, as Australia is.
Right. We're the 52nd.
Yeah, that's right. And so we have to declare neutrality. It goes with our whakapapa to our nuclear neutrality. And so I just see it as another stepping stone to growing our own sovereignty.
Thank you so much. Thank you, comrades. And now to my final word. This year's Youth Parliament has been censored in what they can say for this year's mock debates in the Speaking Chamber. Alongside the censorship, the live streaming of youth MPs' speeches has been cancelled, policy advice for minority communities has been cancelled, and youth MPs have been told they cannot clap, cannot walk, and they sure as Christ aren't allowed to do a haka. Look, if you are dull enough at that's 16, 17 or 18 to want to spend 4 months training once every 3 years for a youth parliament, you've earned the right through sheer boredom to speak your truth loud and proud. This latest attempt by right-wing free speech champions to strangle free speech is another hypocrisy beyond hypocrisy. The youth parliament is there to give voice to those who can't vote. Strangling that voice and pretending to care about free speech is bullshit, and we should protect and praise our young people for standing and speaking. We shouldn't censor them. Why is it that when the right says something offensive, the defence is free speech? But when we criticise their policy, suddenly it's defamation and must be censored. You hypocritical assholes. In solidarity, the revolution continues. Ka pai Aotearoa.
The Bradbury Group, New Zealand's best weekly political argument. The Bradbury Group is an independent podcast through the Rover Network, sponsored by Waatea News. After the show, the Bradbury Group enjoys conviviality at 165 Ponsonby Road. Why not pop down, meet the show staff and plot the revolution? That's 165 Ponsonby Road, Tuesday night drinking at its best. Everything on the show is an opinion and shouldn't be taken seriously enough to attempt defamation action against us. We were joking. We're never serious about anything. And officially, a small weta in Avondale is legally the owner. Good luck finding him. Don't forget to follow, like and comment.